What's up, Familia? Dayspring here with an emergency episode recording of Power of X-Men because we are going to discuss X-Men of Apocalypse Alpha by Jeff Loeb and art by Simone Di Maio. Now, anyone who knows me knows I have been highly skeptical about revisiting Age of Apocalypse. The original Age of Apocalypse was perfect. We did not need the 10th anniversary event. I appreciate it when Rick Remender revisited that world during Uncanny X-Force, but the world shouldn't exist because Age of Apocalypse is the 616 main universe just rewritten after Legion goes back to the past, kills Xavier by accident, of course, and the timeline is reset to a world without Xavier. And the entire premise of the original crossover event is the X-Men of the Age of Apocalypse trying to reset reality and knowing that they're going to be sacrificing their existence for this other world that's supposed to be better, right? That's the entire point of Age of Apocalypse. It's about heroes putting aside their own lives, their own happiness, because in this reality, Magneto and Rogue have a child named Charles, and they have to put all that aside to set reality right. And it's a very beautiful, heroic story. And at the end, as the nuclear bombs go off, Rogue and Magneto and Charles are holding each other. And Magneto says, "This was never our world." And, they get incinerated. So, again, that is a perfectly epic, amazing event. When the original crossover came out, Scott Lobdell, who we're good friends with, we've had him on the podcast many times already, so go please check out those episodes with him. Scott Lobdell said that it was such a game changer for the comic book industry because they were taking the X-Men books, Uncanny X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men, all the other spin-off titles, X-Force, X-Factor, everything that was selling very well, and telling basically comic book retailers and the sales team that they're canceling all those books and that they're going to be doing something called Age of Apocalypse. It was such a gamble, not only for Marvel, but the entire history of the comic book industry, and it paid off. It truly did pay off. And so, again, why revisit it? Well, it's the 30th anniversary, and of course, they have to be celebratory about it. And I am happy to say, very happy to say, that this issue of X-Men of Apocalypse Alpha 1 is really good. Amelia, trust me when I say this. I have not enjoyed anything from the X Office in the last couple of years. I mean, I did give Imperial Exiles a good review. I did give that a good review, but I've never been hyped for a book since probably the dawn of X, maybe Swords, right? Reign of X. Excuse me, issue 1, where we got to see Fabian Cortez and we got to see Magneto and everything that was going on with Sword in the Krakoan Age and Agent Brandt. So that's the last time I was truly excited for an X book. It's been a while. It's been a while. But this book here, I thought, was so good. And I know I got a lot of DMs because I posted my review ahead of recording this on the Instagram page. And of course, I'm immediately flooded with DMs and people just being like, wait a minute, what about this, and that? And I want you to know, when I was reading this issue, especially the first 10 pages, I was extremely confused as well. But I think this issue goes out of its way to explain how the Age of Apocalypse is still around. And I appreciate that. Again, I appreciate when you don't ignore continuity, when you don't sweep things under the rug. I like it when the writer makes an attempt. And in this case, Jeff Loeb made an attempt to talk about how this Age of Apocalypse still exists. And that is something we have not seen from the X Office in a long time, to actually give dignity to past stories and respect continuity. So let's dive into it. I do want to shout out at the top of this review Simone Di Maio's, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Simone Di Maio's art He was on I think Adventures in Portes. No, it wasn't Adventures in Portes. It was a press release from Marvel where he said he was just grateful to be working on this book and that he knows he had to deliver something special because he's writing, or excuse me, he's drawing with Jeff Loeb. And Jeff Loeb is such a legendary writer, and that people are going to expect a certain quality of a Jeff Loeb book. So he really brought his A game to it. The way he said it, it was so humbled. It was something that only a fan could say. And reading this issue, you can tell that he poured his soul into the art. This art is downright beautiful. Everything about it, it's very fluid. The way he uses action with the panels, the character designs are a homage to Joe Mad's original art. It's really beautiful. He has really striking angles in the art. He puts the characters in very unique poses that we haven't really truly seen before. And it's downright gorgeous art. Downright gorgeous art and very consistent throughout the entire issue. And this is, I guess it's supposed to be a supersized issue. It's $5.99, so it's 32 pages. And let me tell you something, to keep up that momentum for the entire issue, I mean, truly, bravo, 32. Well, I guess the last page doesn't count, so it's like 30, or the last two pages don't really count, so it's like 30 pages. Beautiful art. The splash at the end, the other splash at the end, which we're going to get into, and that is a big cause for my motivation of loving this issue very much. Okay. So the issue opens up with Blink, fighting for survival. And the captions read that all Blink knows is fighting for survival. And she's jumping out of a window. She's, falling, and she's porting. She's using her Blink portal to get to Creed and Wildchild. Now, these first opening pages reminds me of something that Rob Liefeld said on his podcast. And I know Rob Liefeld is a lightning rod for controversy, so we don't need to get into it. But I think what he said about the art of making a first issue is you need to capture the readers within those first 7 pages. And typically you do it with a lot of heart and a lot of action. And that's exactly what we get here. We have Sabretooth, Wildchild, and Blink fighting Havoc. Now, Havoc is saying, I'm so mad at you. You killed Polaris on our wedding night. The beast that killed, you are the beast that killed my beloved Polaris on our wedding night. And Havoc goes on to say that you'll never understand why a person like me is a traitor to you X-Men. And of course, Gambit and Rogue then come to the scene, and Gambit unleashes all of his cards, and Rogue is like, what are you doing? You killed Havoc. So let's pause right here, because I know a lot of us diehard Age of Apocalypse fans immediately had so many red flags. Later on in this issue, we're going to hear that Magneto says, the bombs dropped, Apocalypse is dead, and yet we've somehow survived. How is this timeline still in existence? It also goes on to explain via Sinister, the issue explains via Sinister, that when they went back and reset time, that time isn't circular. And instead of, even though they went and they resetted reality, the timeline splintered. How does this explain the 10th anniversary event? How does this explain Blink, Nate, Sugarman, Holocaust crossing over to 616? How does this explain Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force? Amelia, we don't know yet. We don't know yet. But as far as this issue is concerned, when those nuclear bombs detonated, the world somehow survived, and everyone's confused by it. Now, going back to Havoc dying, they say right here, like, we got to get out of here. We got to leave his body here because we don't want to be here when Cyclops arrives and finds his little brother dead. And so we get back to the X Mansion, and we find out that they're on a mission to try to find Forge. And the team consists of Blink, of Gambit, of Rogue, of Morph, of Storm, and of Iceman. Now, of course, again, I know this is a red flag for everyone here, because we're all like, well, wait a minute. Didn't Iceman die in Uncanny X-Force? Question mark. Didn't Morph cross over to the Exiles via, Blink. So again, you have to be on the understanding that something happened at the moment of Age of Apocalypse, where when the timeline was reset, a new timeline was born, and these characters are all here. And that seems to be, I believe, an ongoing mystery for the reader. Now, whether that pays in full at the end of the series, I don't know. I truly don't know. But going based off of what we're seeing right here, the timeline has splintered. And this, for all intents and purposes, is our Age of Apocalypse characters that have now splintered off into a new timeline. So perhaps Rick Remender, the 10-year anniversary event, perhaps those are alternate worlds. We don't know yet. Now, I do want to mention something here because I get a lot of comments, especially because I posted an alternate cover of Rogue and Magneto that paid homage to the very epic X-Men 24 cover with Rogue and Gambit. There is very, very cute tension. Now, last time we saw Age of Apocalypse Gambit, he had sacrificed his love for Rogue so he can get a shard of the M'Kraan crystal, right? They said this at the M'Kraan crystal, where they told him, in order for you to get a shard, you have to give up what you hold most dear. And he's here like, I'm just a petty thief. I have nothing that's of value. And they look at him and they say, that's not true. She believed in you. And by they, I mean the guardian of the M'Kraan crystal, Jaff. And Jaff says, that's not true. She believed in you. And Gambit then realizes, in order to get that shard of the M'Kraan crystal, he has to sacrifice his love for Rogue. And he goes, ha, Rogue, this is for you. And that's where the Rogue and Gambit of Age of Apocalypse romance finishes. The original finishes right there. We never truly get a follow-up. We never see them interacting again. The next time they're all on the bridge in Seattle, about to have that big epic final battle with Apocalypse. And Gambit and Rogue do not have any interactions. Rogue at the end is very much with Magneto and her son Charles. So here we see them kind of talking and they're being coy. And Rogue is like, I didn't call you. Why are you here, Remy? And Gambit looks at her and goes, I like how you said Remy. And then Rogue smiles. And it's very cute. Very well done. Very well done. Very well done. And again, it's just, it goes to the art and the writing. So we find out that Forge is being held by Sinister, who, again, Sinister is also alive. So again, these things, if Sinister is alive, if Iceman is okay, if the world didn't end, stuff like Rogue and Gambit sacrificing his love for Rogue, we can just assume it was just a reset. Reset. But we find out exactly what I just told you earlier in this episode, that the timeline splintered and that they need to find a way to fix it. And Forge is like, I know how to fix it. We need Blink. So they go back to the mansion in Westchester, and Forge basically says that the Age of Apocalypse is over. How we exist, I don't know, but there are moments that will define our future, and we need Blink to take us there. He can create a machine that will pinpoint it there. And Magneto says the Age of Apocalypse is over. We now have a chance to begin the Age of X-Men, our X-Men. So Blink consults with Creed. Her and Mr. Creed had a very strong rapport in the original Age of Apocalypse, and it's a very tender moment. He goes, make your own choice, Clarice. It will be the right one, because Blink is really going back and forth on if she should go on this mission. And Creed is like, all my life, I've tried being one thing when I should have been another, unforgiven. But if there's a chance, just a chance, at whatever time I've got left, it's on my terms, then hell, yes, I'm going to take that chance. And so that gives Blink the motivation to go through with this team moment. And then also, I want to say that there is this beautiful moment, absolutely beautiful moment between Morph and Magneto, where Morph says, I really want to go on this mission. And Magneto's like, you're kind of like a prankster, no jokes, no clown outfit. Is this a setup? And Morph says, I want you to know, if you will have me, I'd like to volunteer for this mission. And he says, the truth is, I act like an idiot sometimes because I'm afraid. Not afraid of getting hurt or even dying. It's just that when I think about you and Rogue and the others, I see you, all of us, as heroes, my heroes. I'm afraid that I'll never be that quick or smart or powerful, but maybe, just maybe, if I can make one of you laugh or smile, I'll have a place on the X-Men. And Magneto says, this mission needs you. And I love that because Morph is just trying to give his teammates a smile as they're going through hell. And my God, they are such a wonderful character. So incredibly happy that Morph is here. They have sold me on this version of Age of Apocalypse Morph. So the team then assembles. The team is, of course, Morph, it's Gambit, it's Sabretooth and Wildchild, it's Forge, and it is Blink. And they teleport off to a moment that needs to be investigated. Let's just say, for lack of a better term, they're going to a moment that's pivotal for them. And so then we cut back to the Citadel in New York, where Holocaust, son of Apocalypse, one of the two remaining horsemen who once ruled under him. And don't forget, it was Abyss, Shadow King. Apocalypse's horsemen were Abyss, Shadow King, Sinister, and Holocaust. And technically, again, Holocaust in the final battle with Nate was transported to Age of Apocalypse. That does not seem to have happened here. And Sinister is like, yes, this was all big orchestrated plan because I need to get back what was once mine and it needs to be returned. And so what could he be talking about? Of course, Nate. And so the next page is the X-Men of Apocalypse arriving in presumably the main universe, presumably the main 616 universe, as it has been advertised. And they look up, and there is Nate Gray himself, who says, "You shouldn't be here." And the caption reads, his name is Nate Gray, possibly the most powerful telepath and telekinetic of this Earth. X-Man. He is confused, he is concerned, and very, very dangerous. And that's how the issue ends. So, of course, I'm losing my shit. Now, here's something that we do need to discuss, and you can DM us at Power of X-Men your thoughts about this. Is this Age of Apocalypse Nate Gray that we have known since 1995? Is it our Nate, or is this the new splintered timeline Nate Gray? If Holocaust is on this on the new splinter timeline, I would assume that world's version of Nate is. And so if this is 616, it's, you know what I mean when I say 616, if this is our Nate, does that mean there is another version of Nate in the other world? And stuff that truly needs to be discussed, because what I'm reading for this is that new splinter timeline's Nate somehow is no longer around. Perhaps Holocaust killed him in the final battle and he is dead. And so they need our Nate back in this new splinter timeline. It's a little confusing. But the wording here where it says possibly the most powerful telepath and telekinetic on this Earth. So I'm assuming this is our 616 main universe Nate. I keep saying 616 when he comes from the Age of Apocalypse, but you know what I mean, just to avoid confusion here. So I believe this is our Nate, and that has me really excited. Of course, because I'm really excited, I'm sure there's something I'm misreading, and maybe it'll go the other way, but who knows? Anyways, so that's sort of my feels on this. Let's look at some questions I got in, because I really do want to address some of them. And we'll get into one of them. We had someone write in very awesome questions. And Manolos writes, the whole sequence with Havoc is off. AOA Lorna was a prisoner of Beast in Factor X. She barely interacted with Havoc. He was interested in Scarlet. I also think he was never an X-Men. He was groomed by Sinister since the orphanage. Havoc was also killed in X-Men Omega, but okay. So again, we kind of discuss his death is still around. Yeah, I mean, that's an infamous death, right? Was it what they were supposed to put a gun on all that death scene because Cyclops and Havoc's power should not affect each other. So there's a whole production issue with that. But you do bring up a really valid point about him being groomed since the orphanage. And all I can say is that perhaps there is a backstory there that needs to be revisited. They're disregarding anything that was shown in Age of Apocalypse since X-Men Omega. Blink is still there, so is Creed and Morph. Well, oh, that's right. Creed did cross over. I forgot Mr. Creed also crossed over in Exiles, which doesn't make too much sense. But then they're also showing Holocaust still around, even though it's a big moment in X-Men Omega that Nate stabs him, the both are transported. So again, I think we just have to accept that the reality splintered. The M'Kraan crystal did some M'Kraan juju magic and somehow splintered. I don't like it either. I truly don't. I am team you on that. I don't like these things to be revisited for these reasons. I get very upset about it. However, I gotta suspend disbelief sometime. Here's another question from another listener. Is Age of Apocalypse that we saw in Rick Remender's run the actual Age of Apocalypse? Up to that point, it was. It was supposed to be a continuation of Age of Apocalypse, the 10-year anniversary event, and what we saw in Rick Remender's Age of Apocalypse. And, that was obviously a very grim Age of Apocalypse that we saw where baby Charles had been killed. Weapon X Wolverine was back to life. Jean had the Phoenix, which was a plot point that was established in the 10-year anniversary event. Characters crossed over like Nightcrawler and Iceman. Iceman was killed in 616. Who knows now? I guess that would be an alternate universe to the alternate timeline. It's confusing. I'm not going to lie to you. It's really confusing, and you really do have to wrap your head around it, and you have to assume M'Kraan crystal editorial juju magic. But otherwise, we won't be able to make sense of these stories. But let's see how these next 5 issues go, and we can talk about where we land on Uncanny X-Force and the reality we saw there. Is Jean in it? And I'm going to tell you that Jean, I'm assuming Jean is alive since everyone seems to be alive. Because again, Sinister was very much dead. Apocalypse and Nate were in the other universe. So we can assume that Jean is somewhat alive. Whereas the Phoenix hasn't been explained yet. We'll see it. I'm so confused by all the different Age of Apocalypse at this point. I can't be angry at someone for saying that because it is confused. Even someone like me, a diehard fan, is confused. But anyways, regardless of all that, I think this was a fun first issue. I think in this era of From the Ashes where everyone is sort of disappointed in the X-Books, not everyone, but you know what I mean. The majority of people are disappointed with the X-Books. I think this is worth picking up and reading. It's a fun, enjoyable read. Obviously, I'm going to be biased here because Nate Gray is at the end. I hope this is truly our Nate and not this new Splinter timeline Nate. That will be contingent on my enjoyment of the series as a whole, being transparent here. But if it was just Nate at the end, I would have just posted an image on Instagram and been like, he's back, done. I think the pacing and the art in this issue are really good. And I think they're doing things right here. If you have to revisit the Age of Apocalypse for a 30th anniversary event, this is how you do it. And there's a lot of heart in the writing and the art. You can tell Simone Di Meo poured his soul into these panels. And I think for that alone, I should pick up the issue. It is $5.99. It's a pricey issue. You can wait, obviously, for Marvel Unlimited, but I get mine through Comixology. I still get my Comixology discount through Amazon Kindle. Go to your local comic book store. I'll be going to my local comic book store to pick up this issue just so I have a copy of it because I am very happy to see it. Anyways, Familia, drop your feels below. Let us know how. Drop your feels below. Wait, we're not on YouTube. Well, no, I think this does go on YouTube. So drop your feels on YouTube. Hit us up at Power of X-Men on Instagram. If you're listening on podcast, hit that subscribe button. Give our podcast a review. You don't have to agree with all of our opinions here, but it does come from a place of love for these X-Books, whether we're giving it high praise or high criticism. Anyways, Familia, we will be at ErieCon this weekend with Scott Lobdell. So check us out there. And we will, of course, be doing New York Comic Con.